Jayaprakash Narayan, you're listening to the politicians. As I said, in general, what electoral bond seems to be slowly exposing is how rent-seeking politicians operate with those who are dependent on government largesse, infrastructure companies, even some drug companies. And the fact is that they are coming together, gaming companies, because electoral bonds provided them a secrecy.
Rajdeep, let me make a broad statement. Even though many politicians are individually honest, without institutional corruption, honesty and survival are not compatible in India right now. Let's face facts. Grandstanding will do no good. I was the one instrumental in persuading the political parties after the Tehelka scam to bring in a law giving the donors 100% tax exemption. Perhaps India is the only major country where such a system is available. What happened is, BJP apparently, Mr. Arun Jaitley told me several times subsequently, BJP took a decision not to take any money by cash because the donor has tax exemption, there's no point collecting by cash, we'll only ask for check. Despite their being in power, within 3 months, the receipts fell by 80 to 90%. Mm-hmm. It is that experience that I think informed Mr. Arun Jaitley when he became finance minister later. And therefore, he thought of a lawyerly solution, not a democratic, transparent solution, but he wanted a solution where the donor gets tax exemption, the party gets by not a cash, but accounted money, and spend it in an accountable manner. This is how we landed in this mess. But see the situation before the electoral bonds. I have some numbers here, 2004 to 2011, in those 8 years. The major parties, only 8% came from disclosed sources. 8.9%. Indian National Congress, only 8%. BJP, only 17%. BSP, 0%. Nationalist Congress Party, 6%. CPM, 1%. So we are not looking at a perfect world and a bad world. We are looking at an imperfect world. So within that, we have to figure out a solution. We definitely require transparency. Nobody in a democracy can argue against transparency. We need to know where the funds are coming from, how they are deployed. We also require a situation where cash is not the primary source of funding political parties, unaccounted and illegitimate. So we are pretending as if there is no cash economy. The total money you're talking about in electoral bonds in the last 14, 15 bonds or checks, it's only about 5% or less than 5% of the total political expenditure in India. I come from a state of Telangana. I know intimately Andhra Pradesh. I'm sure many of us know what's happening in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. Let us not pretend that this is the money that is being spent. A single state in an assembly election is spending 10 to 12,000 crores in some of the major states. So the real challenge is much bigger. We are now using a red herring instead of addressing the problem and finding a solution. There are two central issues we have to tackle. One is, can you create an electoral system where this money distribution and vast expenditure, hundreds of crores of rupees per Lok Sabha in some cases, tens of crores of rupees for assembly constituency per candidate, that we can give that up and have a decent electoral contest. It will take a lot of doing. Mr. Vajpayee as Prime Minister used to say every day, we are lying through the teeth. We are telling the people that we spent only within the ceiling limits. The first affidavit we are filing itself is a lie.
No, give me a solution. Give me a solution, Jayaprakash Narayan. I think everyone knows the problem that electoral bonds were only a fraction of what political parties spend during elections. What's the solution? Kapil Sibal said,
there are
once you
solutions.
Collect through the bonds, give it to each MP in a fixed proportion. Does that work?
It's a bad idea because this money is meant for the political parties functioning. It's not about election finance. And therefore, giving money to MPs is meaningless. This is not about electoral contest. Parties need money. Politics is a noble endeavor. How can you run a party? How can you run a campaign? How can you do research? How can you do campaign? How can you publicize? How can you have public meetings without resources available, legitimately collected, legitimately spent? This is not about election expenditure alone. Election expenditure is where most of the cash is deployed. So that's a bad solution.
But the worry is that if you start encouraging, incentivizing people to give by check, how do you incentivize them? Because the fear is that the moment you do it through check, if you give it to the opposition, the government will go after you. That's the fear. That's the difference between us and the United States, for example.
I entirely agree
We have
with you.
weaponized the enforcement agencies.
Therefore, there are three approaches we have to look at altogether. One, can we, for the party's functioning, not electoral purpose, can the party's functioning give money from the public exchequer in proportion to the votes they get? Germany has that system. Many countries have that system. Per vote they get in the last election, they get X amount of money. That should be enough for the party's survival. As far as the elections are concerned, election expenditure, that's the real expenditure in the country. Probably in an election cycle in India, we are spending 100,000 crores. I'm saying with all sense of responsibility. In Andhra Pradesh, where election is due now, assembly election,
right?
Anybody who knows politics of Andhra Pradesh knows roughly about 10,000 crores is going to be spent in that state. Telangana, where we had elections a few months ago, we spent about 8 to 9,000 crores in Telangana. Everybody knows that we're pretending it doesn't exist. No, that cannot be addressed by all these things. One, we have to create a framework in which you don't have to buy vote. You must change the electoral system in the first past the post system where the marginal vote is all important. In many states,
What's your second?
The second one is, can we create a political economy where the political executive or the party in power cannot determine the economic fortunes of enterprises and individuals? Right now, there's no real rule of law.
Number three.
But in reality, it's not there. It will not happen overnight.
Okay.
We have to now start doing that. Without doing these two things, pretending that there is some angel or some demon, pretending it's a battle between good and evil, is a romantic notion. It's a surreal debate.
I take your point, and that's why I'm glad you're there, because you are not connected with any of these parties